Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're on. So,
Are we on? Cool.
Yes. So, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Non-PC Housing.
Cheers, ladies.
Cheers to you all, too.
Happy Friday.
Cheers.
Happy
Happy
Friday.
Friday.
All right, I think you're going to open us up with our question for this episode.
You ready?
We're ready to hear it.
Oh, I'm opening
Yeah.
with a question? Okay.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to. I thought you were.
You have it written down.
So the question is this evening, everyone needs housing, but does everyone deserve it? And I'll just read the definition of deserve. Worthy of reward. So let's think about that.
Okay.
And shall I answer the question
yeah,
first?
Yeah,
I'll
go
keep
ahead.
going.
We'll just go around. Sure.
So my answer to that is no, not in the capacity of which it is given and granted currently within our low income model. I have to say that I don't believe everyone deserves housing. So I'll elaborate maybe after everyone else's
I mean,
statement.
I'll get in and then we just discuss it from that point.
Yeah.
You're looking at me, so I guess I'm going next. It's okay. And I agree with Betsy on that topic that everyone does deserve housing. Excuse me, that everyone should have housing, but not everyone deserves it. Housing is also not just a right. Unless you're providing your own housing, like if you go out in the woods and you have a place of property and you build your own house and you're on your own, basically. But if you have to rely upon someone else to supply that housing, say apartment dwellers or basically that's, I think, a lot of the topic we're here to talk about tonight is that you need to have a level of respect. You need to stick to your agreements. You have leases you sign. That means both you and your and the owner of the property have to agree to stick with these things. And if you're going to not abide by that, then you should, just blatantly get out. And instead of ruining people's property, and that's the kind of thing that we have a great deal of here. I'm not saying, and there'll be another episode about that, where we have tenants who are being abused by their landlords at some point. But right now, we're seeing a lot in our community with over, I think we're at 1,000 apartments here, and just in 1.4 square miles of Bellows Falls, not even including Rockingham, Greater Rockingham, that we need some solutions, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So that's what I have to say about deserving housing.
I used to, and we are talking about, everyone needs a house, but do they deserve it? And so if they don't deserve it, where do they go, right? Where's the burden? What's the burden on society if we have people that don't deserve housing? Where do they go? When I worked for Pathways, I would tell people, it's your God-given right in America to have a place, to have shelter, to have safety. And I initiated that, and and these people agreed with me. But until a point, until you have rights to have an apartment, until your rights violate others. And I think in some cases we have people that are violating the rights of other people that are living in the building, and they're violating the rights of the quiet enjoyment and violating the rights of the landlord that puts a lot of time and energy and effort into these buildings. Not every landlord does. Some landlords feel like, if you want to be a bum and live like a bum, then I'm going to let the apartment, go to waste. And, we've got decay and we're going to look at a few pictures online pretty soon. But I would like to say everyone deserves an apartment, but you have to have respect for that. And I think we're at a point right now with the topic tonight that, not everybody deserved to stay in this one particular building that we're going to talk about in Bellows Falls tonight.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say, yeah, everyone deserves a place. But hey, you know what? You made your bed, and now you have to lay in it. Is what my parents used to tell me.
There's a level of effort that's required for
Yeah.
maintaining housing, whether it's your house or whether you're in someone else's house. Guest rule. Essentially, that's what leases are intended to provide, which is rights for you and rights for the owner, and also all the other tenants in a building. If it's not just two apartment place. You've got children in there. They're trying to, get through their lives and provide safe places for them to be after school. We expect that safe schooling is important, and they get to do that. We provide that as a public benefit. But the benefit of your home is something that you have to continue to work on and respect. So maybe we should see some of these pictures in a few minutes.
Well,
Let's give them a holler when we're ready.
Or yeah, we have a bunch of pictures for y'all, and we'll bring those up. So hopefully you haven't just eaten. We're gonna warn you a little bit. But before we get into the pictures,
Good idea.
we need to talk about like who deserves housing and who maybe doesn't. So I think that the whole deserves point. We need to head home because we do want to support people and in our community and give them a chance. But my feeling is when they blow that chance and when they totally disregard the landlord and the community and the neighborhood, there needs to be something else that we have to do about that. And I know the last week's topic was 21 Henry Street.
Yep.
And we talked about that, and that was a big reason for why we got together as this group, because those were 12 people that were getting evicted. We did talk to the landlord, and he bought the property months ago, and he gave everyone a notice, and we're thinking that mostly everyone is going to be out by the end of the weekend. But, I mean, you saw the email that I sent you.
Yep.
We had squatters in there. We had gentlemen who were ripping off catalytic converters in Springfield, living with the 80-year-old Abenaki woman and convincing her that they were her boyfriend and moving in with her. We had people in that building, and the landlord had no idea. He's from New Hampshire.
Right.
When you say you're being evicted, they're done with people in 1 month. He gave these people 3 months, and they were still squatting. So we had people in there that were overdosing, living, but then moving in other drug dealers that had been evicted from other properties, particularly on Green Street.
Did you also say there was a grow project going on there, a grow room?
Yep. So when this particular landlord entered the building, they had a marijuana grow room, which I get marijuana, so I'm not against marijuana or anything like that. But he also had a drug den, where there was literally thousands of hypodermic needles all over the place. And he had no control over the building, so you don't know if kids were running in and out of there, what was in those needles. So we had a situation where we had people living in there that were addicted to drugs, and then we had a situation where they moved in people that were evicted from Green Street, a Green Street house, that were drug dealers. Mm-hmm. And they were squatting. And then you had groups of people, he told me, that were probation and parole from law enforcement. Mm-hmm. You had people in there that had already been arrested, and the cops knew about these people. He had a very hard time removing people that didn't live there. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this in emails and things like that.
Yeah.
So, this landlord had a situation where he couldn't control what was going in there. The cops in Bellows Falls told him, the fire department said, we want to help you with this, but our hands are tied. We've got a catch and release system going on here. And we can't go in if the 80-year-old woman, who we know is being abused, wants these particular people to live with her. Yeah. We can't get those people out no matter what the criminal activity is. He had people like like living in the backyard in a tent. And, you know, the old lady was like, you know, I don't mean to say old lady, but she was 80 years old. Oh, no, you know, leave them in there. They're okay. They're okay. And the cops couldn't do anything.
I want to make sure people are aware we're not just banging on 21 Henry Street, just
No,
because it is a
that's-
microcosm and a macrocosm of our community, and it's a confined space where all of this horrible activity continues to go on. Is almost impossible to shake free. We want the best for everyone. We want them to go on to lead productive lives or quiet enjoyment of the properties that they're living in, but they're not doing that, and so. We're trying to figure out where the tools are, and this has been a major discussion for many organizations in the last several weeks. What tools are available to owners of the property, additional residents who are having, because not all the people who were in that building were problems necessarily. Some people just had no choice. They moved on quickly because they got help from assistance services or they found another place to go, or they're couch surfing with someone else. Until they find a proper place to go, because available housing stock is limited. No one's going anywhere. The pandemic, after the pandemic, no one wants to go. But it just becomes an example of where all these pieces that come from state and local and government and just individual helpers, volunteers, and so on and so forth, not being able to affect a proper change. We need to be more cooperative. We need to coordinate the services, including emergency services like fire and police. The laws from the legislature need to be stronger to help these problems, and the monies that are available to fix programs, to fix things, to help people get in housing, to take care of issues. If mental health is an issue or if drugs are an issue, they need to be more coordinated to actually make these things work. Instead, they're left, and what we've got to see are things like their own filth, because they can't help themselves, and in many cases are not letting people help them. And I wanted to just make sure Betsy has an opportunity to speak and we're not hogging up the time.
Well, I will just mention that. So where are the landlord's rights? So here's a person that saw an opportunity, a 12 apartment building that is gorgeous that needed work. And obviously the last owner was done with that problem. So here's someone that wasn't familiar with the Bellows Falls community and kind of walked into a crapshoot. So, it was really exciting that so many of those folks found new places and it was promising. But how do we protect that landlord that then there was strangers moving in with this woman and she was offered 2 different apartments, correct? And she said no. She said no thanks because, I'm getting whatever on the side here.
Whatever she needs right now. Yeah.
Right. But he was also working with HCRS, and HCRS came and said, sorry, we just don't have, we placed these people in this building, and we just can't find any place for them to live, so you might have to wait a little bit. They got them out. They did move them. But, you have to look at when you talk about, we want to help these people. We have so many social service agencies that what is happening in Bellows Falls and probably other towns is they come in, it's a hot potato. Yeah. They get them into housing, they convince the landlord, and then the case is closed. So if the person is working with an agency and then they get housing and the person doesn't respond back to the agency has the right to close their case. And now the landlord is stuck with them. We had a meeting the other day with Springfield Supportive Housing, and you'll remember this. They said something like, housing is a mental health issue now. Housing is now a mental health issue. So housing supports mental health, not for people who have disabilities, but for everyone. If everyone can't get an apartment, they're going to have mental health issues because housing is a safe, supportive structure. So now landlords are in a situation where, oh my God, I got to provide the world with an apartment, but yet they get to do whatever they want to me. They don't have to pay me. They can spread fecal matter all over the place. They can kill their animals. They can leave hypodermic needles. It doesn't matter. They cannot pay me. and then I get left with them. That's what's going on. These landlords are getting people unloaded on them.
But they could say no. I mean, they could say no.
But initially, what happens is these social service agencies, oh no, we'll be with you. We'll help you out. We'll stay with these people have supportive services. But the minute the person decides they don't want supportive services anymore, they can't make that person go to supportive service, and then they drop them.
So they get them to the door,
they get them to the
and
door.
then they walk away.
Right,
I mean, essentially, is what
Not
we're
in every
talking
case, but that's what we're
about.
talking
So
about.
there's no guarantee of continued support once they leave, because the person can say no thanks.
Yeah, I'm out. I
Yeah.
got my cronies here, and I'm good. I'm sleeping with the 80-year-old lady, and then I'm getting
Can
my
I
drugs
just
from
add
the
something
people
to
across
that?
the hall.
So here, we Vermont are giving this service, and this is part of my no, not everyone deserves housing. So we're giving more services than maybe surrounding states. So people are coming here for our services, which again, we'd like to welcome everyone, but maybe not everyone that needs the hand and isn't going to then help us fill it and springboard off of that hand.
How do you figure that out, though? How do you calculate
Exactly.
this group is going to be hardworking and they're going to make everything to make roots here, and we're going to help them? And then what are you supposed to, as a group that has, as organizations that have missions? Their mission statement doesn't say, "Oh, I'm not going to help this guy." So what can they do, and what can we do to help sort that problem? It is a problem. Again, we have a lot of people that come from out of state, other places up north in Vermont that they've maybe utilized all those services, and now it's time to come someplace else, and they wind up here. What can we do? They have to, basically, you put your hand out and someone says, "Okay, I'll help you," but they don't know all the backgrounds. They don't know this person's. They're not vetted.
No.
We have no idea.
And you can ask. I'm in a situation where I had a social service agency come to me and want to house a woman, and I asked, "Well, what's the deal?" And they were like, "Oh, it's no big deal. She's not getting evicted. She's fine, blah, blah, blah." And come to find out after she got in, she wasn't. So I was lied to. But why is it our responsibility in tiny little Bellows Falls to take on this glut? Why, is single landlords that have, like me, only 11 units, or other people that only have 20 units or something like that, or they're not human service agencies. It just feels like people are being unloaded, and then once they get in, they have litigious rights, whether they claim that they're disabled now because after they move in, they become disabled. And then now you can't work. You have to work within more confines. Or after they move in, they decide to take up smoking. So that person that you didn't want, you don't want smokers in your building. Well, I just started back smoking now, so now I'm smoking, and you can't kick me. All that kind of thing. But I think what I'm seeing is, and I don't mean to pick on 21, but 21, the landlord is finally relieved that the people are out. A lot of the people in there, he feels, were not aware that they could probably, stay and squat forever. They just decide to move on. Most of them, a good portion of them, were dealing in drugs and were using drugs, so probably didn't want to reach out to legal aid and get help. So, but there are, and I know because I've been told this by law enforcement, there's probably about 4 other drug houses in Bellows Falls. And that's all.
Listen, when
I heard 4,
and I'm going to say this: when Thaddeus Buckley was here some years ago, now he's no longer even a part-time officer for Bellows Falls. He came into a meeting. This could have been 6 years ago now. I'm not positive. And he put up a whiteboard where he showed us where all the drug houses were.
I'm good with that.
Okay, there were way more than 4. There were like 20 or maybe 24. I'm not sure, but there were quite a few.
What year was that?
Jesus, I'd be looking at.
How long have you been on the board?
Well, I've been on the board since 2011, and it was after that. But I think it was I was trying to think. Was I on the board, or was I sitting in the audience? Because there were a couple of gap years there where I didn't. But that tape disappeared and his board disappeared, so no one could see them. And I understand some of the sensitivity of that, but at the same time, when you say 4, I doubt that's true. And they're also muted they mutate. There are some houses that are drug houses, and they get rousted or something happens, and they move off to another house, or they move out of the town, and then they move back into the town. There's several entities of which I'm aware that are doing exactly that. And then some of them moved out, and then they moved back in, and they died from an overdose.
Right.
So that's still going on. It's like you just don't know. It's not like there's a flag on top of every house that says, "Hey, drug house."
I know.
You just don't know.
Well, can I just mention that contributing member of society? I mean, that statement, yes, I think people are offended at sometimes because we still use that. But again, looking at, because I like to define things, they contribute. They say or do things to help make things successful. They give of their time, of their money, of philanthropic, they donate. And they show up with intent. So that is something that the people holding their hand out, they're not doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is part of that problem. So how do we, if you can show that you care and you show that you're going to do something with what the state gives you, what what these support services can help you with.
And I think this is a walking community, and I think people that walk around, they see this, and they can identify and they pick out.
Yeah.
When I bought my house on Green Street, I didn't know the house next door was a drug den. I didn't know that. It would have been nice.
It's not like it was marked on the door.
Hold on. It would have been nice, though, because you can go to Claremont and you can call the chief of police or the fire department and say, "Can you tell me about the activity in the neighborhood I'm going to buy in?" And I have had the police and the fire chief in Claremont say, "Yeah, this is a pretty bad neighborhood. Just gonna let you know, we've had like 50 calls, 60 calls." I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But our community and our police department. So if the police know we have 5 or 4 drug houses, why isn't this being brought to the trustees, Deb? Why isn't this a conversation on the agenda? Even if it has to go into executive session, and why aren't we focusing on cleaning this up?
Okay, first of all, so you're aware, the trustee's only employee is the manager. We don't control the chief of police. We don't control his officers. We don't control the fire department or the fire chief. These are all issues that some may see. We have 5 members on the board, and I'm trying to think, am I the only one who sees this? Because I see a lot of it. I've got kids in town. I've got their friends. I'm in the community. My business is in the community. I'm paying attention to stuff that's going on. And I don't hear it at the table. I've asked that be brought up. The manager intends to talk about it in manager's business at the beginning of the meeting on Tuesday. But I have to say, despite the fact that they continue to cry low manpower, is still not effective enough when some things can be done. There should be more patrolling. We should see their presence to try and discourage some of the crap. They know where drug issues are. Can you call my police department in the village and ask them what this neighborhood is like?
No.
Will they tell you?
No, they won't. I've tried.
So
they
that
won't.
becomes if you can call another community and do that.
Right.
It doesn't seem balanced that you can't do that here. There are so many houses in our very small area, which is why we have our own fire department. People might say, why do we have 3 fire departments in Rockingham? You can talk to Sackens River, you can talk to Rockingham Village, Rockingham town, the rural area, but Bellows Falls is a very congested area, 1.4 square miles with a lot of property. And so the activity is real. There are people in the community who will say something. They've complained about response times. They complained about not seeing an officer all day. Those are the kinds of things that we get. You've got activities going on. You can see them, some of them. I can see some of them. Not all the time, sort of random, although some of them are pretty routine. But there's no one responding. When you make a call to the police department because you see something, and you're supposed to be see something, say something, right?
Well,
and then you wait, and then 20, 40 minutes goes by, an hour goes by, you never see a police officer.
And you feel like an idiot because the situation is gone.
Yeah.
Right? They come 40 minutes later.
They're so late that no one happens. So
right.
Police response is minimal, and a lot of people are apathetic. And I understand their reasons for apathy. if you can't get police response for something you see, who knows what else is going on in the properties. And I couldn't say I could point out drug houses. Perhaps you could. But I can see activity in the street, and I would think, why isn't an officer going by and seeing that? So there's a breakdown of communication between what the community needs and what the community's getting.
So the landlord at 21 raved about the, I just want to say this, the police and fire department and Chuck, and he said, those people really helped me.
Good.
And he said that the police and fire came to me and said, we want to clean this house up. We get calls every day here. We're coming here every day. We want to clean it up. So where's why can't they clean it up? Where does the police department have to go? Does the police department have to go to the town manager and say, listen, our hands are tied? Do we need to take it legislatively? Do we need to take it to the governor? If the police department knows about all these, and I truly believe this is the case, they catch them, and the
judicial
judge
system
lets them go.
Yep.
And they get bored with that. They keep, it's just like, Beck, it's tiring because we can go in there and we can arrest them, and then they just come right back. So, like, where is the manpower here? Is the manpower with the trustees, or is the manpower further up?
And it's not. So the manager, but we can direct the
the
manager
activity.
to do something, and the manager can speak to the police chief and so on and so forth. But whether or not it actually happens is it's still there. Whether something actually takes place, more activity. So I'm glad that that's a good example that our emergency services have been helpful. I do. Yep. The zoning administrator, that's Chuck, said he did not feel that legislature was going to come up with any solutions, any direct solutions that could help us in our community with the amount of drug activity we've got going here. But he did say that he thought that local ordinances might have some impact. First of all, ordinances in writing are always a deterrent. So some people who might think about it would maybe not do it. There are those who will continue to do so. But once you write an ordinance, it has to be enforced. Could you say, certain whatever the activities are, if no growing in an apartment building, that kind of thing. The landlord has the right to put that in their lease too, of course. But there are different kinds of things, like no sleeping outside. That kind of thing. That's a vacancy one, and there's some issues with that these days. But there's still. I heard yesterday, that they were complaining still about the transportation center in Brattleboro is still a problem, and that's a homeless subject, which is different. But local ordinances could have an impact. Zoning bylaws could have an impact, and we just think serious about that because they're local laws that we can push for enforcement. Legislature is, the wheels of government grind slowly, and I have not seen anything, unless you have at this point, that's going to be an effective tool. That's again what I asked the zoning administrator too. What are the tools that we have to use? There's your lease. That's right.
Yeah, but if
if
I had a lease, so I'll give an example of that. I have a lease and I rent to Betsy, and Betsy gets a boyfriend. And then Betsy dumps him, but she moves out and the boyfriend's there. I don't have a lease with the boyfriend. And then the cops come and I say, get this man out. He doesn't have a lease. They say, he's there because he's living in there, so we can't do anything about it.
Is it at-will tenant?
No. Once he's in there, he's squatting and he's in there for good. They can't move him. So no matter what I have in my lease, they're not going to abide by my lease. So if I say I have a no-grow situation in my lease or a no drug use, we all have no drug uses in our leases.
Okay.
And we had a woman on Green Street for 2.5 years dealing and doing drugs, dealing to 25% of the community in Bellows Falls. I had people walking in there that I know. So even though he had that in the lease, the cops knew it. They didn't pull her out of there. She eventually got evicted after 2.5 years because they had a 90-year-old landlord that, couldn't remember what he did yesterday. Not his fault.
That is one of the problems is elderly folk that don't realize what kind of people.
Handshake from the 1940s.
Yeah. And they think everything's going to be. And that's
they
what you
think
expect.
everything is going to be good.
Right.
And then she goes away, and now she's back on Henry Street.
But now, do you think if the elderly man was supported by then all of the other landlords? So here I'm on Green Street, and I'm surrounded by, I know the landlord of this building, and of course I live with my landlord. He lives downstairs. and I know the owner of the next building. So if these people can all join forces,
Okay, so
and
now
at
you're
least
talking
be on
about
the same
a
page.
landlord organization where a safe space for them to be able to talk. I mean, then again, everybody doesn't want to talk about it. Whether you're a tenant or a landlord, you're afraid. They come to speak to somebody like us who might be able to have a voice and try to get it out there, what's going on. But having safe place for them so they can talk to each other and say, well, I did this and that worked. I did this and it didn't work. But we
Exactly.
could do this.
Suggestions to how do we prevent this and how do we get rid of
Those
this
that
and
need
start
help.
over.
I thought that was the case, but I talked to a landlord today. She manages over 100 units in the area, and she said no one comes to me. No one comes and asks me anything about, when they're going to rent to somebody, they don't come to me. So I don't think landlords are worried about a safe space. I think
Yeah.
they just have their ego. They know it all. They don't need to be involved. Maybe it's an ego thing, or there's not one person that is gathering all of them together where they
Yeah.
are going to get something done.
But when things go to hell in a handbasket, they need somebody.
They do.
That's when they need somebody.
Yeah.
So ego
And
be
someone
damned at
to
that
call
point,
and
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
if there's 10 of you to call,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like we need an emergency meeting.
I
Let's
want to
deal with this.
ask, since we know we have limited time,
Yep.
right? We don't take this into a 2-hour session.
No.
We have those
What time we
pictures
have? Yes.
that we'd like to show. They're examples of what is going on in our housing.
Right.
And so if someone could run the
Not
photos
in
that'd
this
be great. Here we
community.
go.
Should we say not in this
And
community? or does that
remember,
matter?
some of these will be distasteful. So if you have a
Yeah,
weak
and
stomach,
we don't have an address. So we're not going to say what address
No.
we got these from, but we did get these pictures from a landlord in our purview. And for some of you, this might be common. Some of you might not even know what you're looking at, but there's 1, 2, 3 hypodermic needles right there, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, no, there's
more there.
There's one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 needles, 7 needles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 caps. That's like 7 doses of whatever they're using,
Yeah.
which that's 1 hour.
and I don't even
That's
know
1
what's in
hour.
those cups, and I don't want to know.
We don't know what's in those cups. And this is a picture of an apartment that they vacated it. They're gone. They moved out. They got evicted. They just leave everything behind. And so the landlord now has to deal with picking up these needles that some of them are capped and some of them are not. There could be fentanyl in there, heroin, or God knows what's in there.
Well, biologics that could hurt someone if they're not careful
yes.
in picking them up.
Yep. Yeah, so that's just one shot that
Could you roll the next picture, please? Here we go.
So this particular apartment had someone in there. Now you might look at that cage and think, oh, that's just a cage with, an animal was living in that. This mound right here is actually the fur that is left over from the animal that died. So that cage housed a ferret or a bunny, and they just let the animal die, and it deteriorated to the point where you have a mound of fur, and that's it. In that cage and the cage you see over there were all animals that have been deceased for many, many, many months and are just deteriorated. So
Want the next one? There we go. Thank you.
this is your favorite run, right? So
Oh God.
this is not a situation where someone was living in there and they just threw everything in the kitchen and left. You see the cigarette butt on the chair. So they would sit there, hang out, smoke their cigarettes. Their laptop is up in the corner, up top. They utilize the space. And, they just destroyed, just left it, who knows what's in the sink or anything like that. They obviously had visions of maybe buying a car right
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
They would sit here and digress about their life or whatever. But this is just some of the scenes that landlords will run into. This is why we talk about, everyone needs housing, but do they deserve it? Yeah. So this particular person is going to get evicted and then just go to another community or go to another landlord that isn't associated with a landlord group or doesn't know any better. hook up with a 90-year-old landlord that doesn't know how to ask references.
Yep. Next photo, please.
So the landlord that sent me this told me that that's feces. That's feces on the refrigerator. And he knows that because in this particular apartment, there was feces everywhere.
And you'll find out why.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Yeah.
Next photo, please.
Do you want to speak to this or you want me to?
Well, I'm greatly concerned because this is based upon the condition of this property. It appears that that's all stuff that would have come from like food banks and that, useful food that would have served people who needed it. And yet they left it behind like this. It looks like it's been left open. There's like a rat in there, has gotten into the butter. And there's all kinds of eggs and meat. I mean, just
the
stuff
meat,
that costs,
it looks like prime rib, like porterhouse steak.
It looks like there's at least $200 worth of meat in here that has now gone to waste and will be tossed because they weren't able to, because they didn't utilize it properly. They had other priorities besides eating a healthy meal. Next picture, please. I'm going to cry if I see more of these.
I wonder if he left our best photo out. So this is just another example. Betsy liked this one.
Just for me, it was trash. So this all should have just been thrown in a trash bag. Instead, it was thrown on the floor.
Yeah, there's
because they
dog
didn't give a
food
shit.
cans and bags, and that looks like blood on the top of that unit right there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say. Maybe it's meat blood, maybe, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Next photo, please.
And those were
more pets.
more cages of animals that this particular owner, all of the cages had animals that were deceased. And another owner found frozen ferrets in the freezer. Yeah, they were either...
You held that one back. You didn't tell us until
I didn't
now.
tell you that.
Oh
So
my
either
God.
the ferrets died and they put them in the freezer for later, or they actually put the ferrets in the freezer.
You're not sure which.
Yeah.
Next photo, please.
Next. And this is just more. So this is just stuff that people leave. For all the support services that we have in the state of Vermont, these people didn't need their mattress, they didn't need their books, they didn't need their videos, they didn't need their clothes or shovel or broom or whatever else, their fish tanks, and they just left it all behind, and they're on to the next landlord or the next community.
What's bothering me here is I think there's some children's clothes in that group too. So
Yeah.
go ahead. Go to the next one.
This is a nice one.
Now you know why there's feces everywhere. Because
So they don't have their toilet to
We don't know
defecate, and I don't know. They filled it. They look like they maybe tried to plunge it, but it probably got stuck.
Backed up. Yeah.
Backed up, and they just are, and it's black as black can be, and so they're not using that toilet anymore. So they go into the bathroom in the sink or the tub, or.
If your place is trash, you probably don't want to be calling the landlord and asking them in to fix it. So.
But when we hear about landlords that are getting disgusted, this is what they're dealing with, and this particular person had supportive services. Where was supportive services? Why didn't they check this apartment? Why didn't they go in weekly and clean up for this particular person?
I'm not sure if we have any more photos, but you can move on, please.
Yeah, is that it? Yeah, and that's just
And that's just another far back shot of the kitchen and such
with
as
more
it is.
cages, animal cages, and I feel bad for whoever gave this person the animals. Because they're probably
Feel bad for the animals. Yeah.
Yep. The stove.
It's covered
Yeah.
with stuff.
Oh yeah. So this is.
Beds, no sheets. It's okay.
Yep.
You can move on.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
back.
And the heater cover is taken off, and the
And all
mattress
the
is right next to
cigarette
it.
butts, so they obviously were smoking in the apartment.
So that looks like a fire
That's
ready
all
to happen.
feces
So.
on the wall
Oh
from what?
God.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a white mattress at one time, probably.
Actually, I think it's blue on the corner.
Yeah.
Is there another? I think there might be one more photo left. Please.
No.
Nope, we're done.
Okay.
Thank you so much for showing
Thank you.
that.
So,
We've been through them 2 or 3 times. It's sad.
and we will share more stuff like that, but yeah, that's what we run into.
Okay. I'm not sure where to go with it. That kind of like put
I
a
know.
line underneath
I
everything.
know, but and that's maybe that's similar. That may be other things than just drug related. There might be other issues going on with that particular person, but You know, I've seen other apartments where there's people that are just engrossed in their habit and their drugs, and
that wasn't just one person. That was a family that lived there.
yeah, but that was
it
one.
was
That was
evident.
all one apartment.
Yeah,
That
one
wasn't
apartment, yeah.
several different apartments. That was one apartment. But you know, 28 Green Street. I mean, I own 28 Green Street, but 21 Henry Street. Just he's got a lot to clean out there. You know, they just when they leave,
It's
they
just
don't.
beginning, yeah.
They don't pack up, you know, a 22-foot U-Haul and take
Right.
everything with them. They just leave it behind and move on.
Yep, they take their what the bare essentials are, whatever it is they think they need, and then that's it.
Yep.
Well, we do have a letter to read. We have to pick another topic.
That's the time. Wow.
It's quarter to 6. I
Okay.
know. Yeah.
So
So
the
we're
letter.
looking at the letter. I have a letter from.
And
it was
should
this-
we just,
this one. Go ahead.
ponder what we just showed you?
Yeah.
What are give us suggestions or tips
Yeah,
or who
how to deal with this?
right? How do we support the landlord that's dealing with this? The landlord at 21 Henry.
yeah.
I mean, I would say in lots of eviction cases there's desperation with the people, but when you look at the drug paraphernalia and stuff, it just puts a totally different light on it. It's not a family who desperately got out of there and they trashed the place on the way out. It's just the whole apartment's trashed, and months and months of it. It's not last minute rushing to get stuff out of there. This just yeah. I just couldn't imagine it. Well, worse, but it probably could be.
You know, and we formed this group saying, where are these poor people going to go?
That was
And
how we
now-
started.
And now you see this, you're like, God, I hope they're not staying local. You hope they move
know.
on. You
Listen,
know,
I came
would you
to
want to
this-
rent to?
No,
that
I came to this
person?
group thinking that mainly the landlords were assholes,
Yeah.
put it out there, and that the tenants were all being treated poorly. But it turns out that it's not just a one-way street here. We've got both, and we need to be supportive of both. But again, our basic question is, does everyone deserve housing? And you look at that, and what would people say to these people, whoever they are, about this housing? What would you say about how they left it? How and think about the ramifications. This makes it look worse for the landlord who may decide to stay in the business, fixes it up. What more can he do? How much can he risk? He or she risk.
So
to
can
continue
that
doing
though be added to those people's record and that follows them?
I don't think it does. Is it?
Well, if somebody reaches out to that particular landlord, yeah, then he can say this is what happened.
But do
in my
you think they're
apartment.
going to tell them
They're
that
not,
that's who they
because
live
No,
with?
that
they
particular
definitely
person
won't.
is probably going to hook up with some social service program and be like, oh yeah, they have a landlord from 5 years ago and it was all good.
And they put a load of shellac on it, and you
Yep.
just never know it.
Yeah, these people are revolving
Yes,
through
they're
our
cycling
housing
through.
system. So how is that? Either the landlords are really stupid and you're not asking the questions and you're not doing your research, or, they just don't bother to dig deep.
But when you go to
And-
support services, how much can you get?
Right.
I mean, from them. So then you're doing background checks, you're doing credit checks.
These people don't come with backgrounds.
I know.
So it's like, oh, we'll give you an extra $1,000 to house them.
Well, you got names, you can Google them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's that, and sometimes the criminal records and things like that will show up, but you don't know. It's like that's a lot of work. You want to be, especially if like you're the older landlord, you want to be able to trust the people that you put. They look like they've got a couple little nice little kids. They really just need a place, right? They're trying to make it on their own, and you know what? Most of the time that might be just it. But the reality is, I don't know what would you say would be the percentage of bad tenants versus good tenants? It's probably 10% versus
1 in
90.
10. Yeah, it's probably
Okay.
1 in 10. But
And
you know,
that's
when
it,
you
the
when,
one bad
but
apple.
when you get most of them focused in Bellas Falls, do you know what I mean? You get one house. When you get one house like 21, one bad tenant is going to attract all their social network, and especially if you have a landlord that's absentee.
Oh yeah.
And that's what happened to 21.
Yeah.
There was an absentee landlord,
Right.
and they just moved in. And
Yeah.
this particular landlord worked with human service agencies. And 25 years ago, they were probably great. Now, not so much.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah.
Well, we do have some feedback from written feedback from at least one of our viewers from our last episode, and I wanted to be able to read this to you without names, of course. so you can understand it, because we are running out of time, and then we have to pick another topic for next week, and maybe have to revisit this one if we get some answers. Okay, so here his housing thoughts. First, thank all of you for doing this. We need more uncomfortable conversations about everything. I will admit I no longer live in BF, firstly, but the entire area is tied to everything that happens there, like frequenting the businesses in town, schools, and yes, the crime spreading out. And please don't quote me by name. I still get enough hate from my time on boards. Housing isn't my specialty, but if you ever expand onto other politically incorrect subjects, I consider joining a panel. And she's going to mention me. Deb and I have actually been able to have some very constructive disagreements on boards we're on together. I guess I'll start with a minor criticism, but it's more of a discussion starter. The terms productive members of society and productive citizen were used a lot, and to me it does somewhat of a disservice to our disabled and elderly population. I'm going to stop right there and say that was never our intention. It was only for people who should be working, who should be productive members of society, the kind of people that we see dealing disservice to landlords here. That's what we intended. Those who have worked their lives and are retired and are able to actually be retired, which a lot of us older people, and I include myself in that, are not. And those who have given their service to their country and survived, lived to tell the tale, to that we give you our thanks. So
And
that
those
was
are exactly contributing members of society.
exactly, and that's what our intention was, never to say anything negative about that. I know that isn't what you meant, but that is how it could be heard. People deserve stable housing, whether we find them useful or not. Taking care of remember this is her opinion, taking care of our most vulnerable and all that. I know what you were trying to say, however, was about people who are capable of working for a living, yet choose to steal catalytic converters for cash instead. I don't know what the polite term is for that, and I can tell you that I have certainly used a lot of impolite terms for them myself. That is a whole other issue that needs dealing with. One of my friends clued me into the fact that SSI disability recipients are completely screwed when it comes to housing. SSI doesn't even begin to pay enough for a market rate apartment, so they have to rely on Section 8 or other public housing. But worse, they have no path out. SSI rules require that they have no more than $2,000 in savings, and it gets checked pretty often, and they'll lose the SSI income the very next month if they go over. Market rate apartments run at least $1,600 a month. Oh my God. Meaning you have to front at least $3,200 to move in. That's first, last, and deposit. They aren't allowed to save that much to move anywhere else. There is a bill being proposed to update that if you are interested, and she gives me the bill, which I could send to Alex and he could post on our site. So we moved out of Bellows Falls when we had our kid, and the demographics of the town were a huge factor. Coupled with that, with what we considered short-sighted thinking by the Rockingham Select Board, the quality of schools, lack of daycare, and the exceptionally poor quality of the police responses we had to deal with regarding things that happened due to those demographics. I also had attended some BIFTA meetings, trustee meetings, and others in the town, and honestly, we felt like our voices were not heard, and none of the organizations cared about people like us. We had good tech incomes, we're homeowners, no kids, which left us with more disposable income than many residents. If conversations didn't include the arts, low-income housing, or business owners in the square, nobody wanted to hear what was important to us. We definitely felt like we were not the kind of people that they wanted to live there. Trying to talk about amenities that would bring more people like us to town were dismissed as us being elitist. There has been times since when we were looking for rentals, and the market rate apartments in that town are generally atrocious. Large houses chopped up with kitchens and baths just stuck in random places, cheap builder grade carpet installed with no pad, totally stained and worn and not replaced between tenants, including in kitchens, wood flooring just painted instead of refinished and not done very well. 1950s sinks and sometimes matching 50-year-old appliances. Outdated electric, no weatherproofing, ancient windows, no dishwashers, and no options for higher-end things like better kitchens or more than one bath. They just seem chopped up in the cheapest way possible to collect the most rent possible. Code enforcement might help with some of that, but it seems like the landlords scare their tenants into showing up to vote against that. Tenants are so afraid of losing their housing that they also won't call in complaints about serious dangers right now. In this market, I am not sure how many traveling nurses or higher income people with more options you will attract with the current housing stock. The nicest apartments in town are income restricted. Last thing I'll bitch about, I think the overnight parking stickers are just the town subsidizing slumlords. Apartments that have at least one parking space and green space law enforcement would make much more of an inroads to creating nicer housing. People who are all about the free markets might say that it would help make the landlords have to compete with each other a little more for tenants once we start to address the housing crunch. I think a lot of people consider apartments in BF to be where you go when you're desperate for housing and can't get anything else. Last paragraph, sorry, one more. Dense housing is good for the environment and good for towns. However, the tax structure has got to be changed. Landlords pay low property taxes. There was a house near the school with 6 apartments and something like 18 kids going to the school that paid taxes on less than $100,000 value. There's no way the taxes on certain landlords are coming even close to covering the share of services that are used by their tenants. Personally, I advocate for school funding to be an income tax, not a property tax statewide. It's the only way to make it fair. Again, thank you for talking about things that people don't want to talk about out loud and reading through my rant here. And I thank you very much to the writer of that. And there are several items in there, as well as landlords being told that they're not paying enough in taxes. I have that bitch too. We can have another conversation about that at a different time. But this is from someone who doesn't live here now, but who tried to live here.
How long ago?
That's only a few years ago. She has a couple kids now, so it's probably been maybe 6 to 8. I'm not sure.
Yep.
So that would make sense. And
Which, right, so much has changed in the last 2.
Yes.
But
but
it's
some
very
the general
unfortunate.
overview is still pretty much the same.
And it's very unfortunate that she felt that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So saying that we do have a lot of low-income people living in Bellows Falls, and is that right? But it is what it is.
Right.
So when you put in businesses that have upper-end items, can
But-
you expect them to?
Well, like she said, she had a good point. The only place that you can get a fully renovated apartment is through working through a Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust or an agency that can afford to pay $300,000 to renovate an apartment.
Yeah.
That's
They
the
have
rate.
the money.
I
Yeah.
can't,
Well,
yeah.
right, because they get federal
They get
funding,
federal funding.
then it has to be low-income housing.
Look at the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust project.
Yeah.
How was that? Is that $9 million?
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone did the math and said 27 apartments, $9 million. Do you know how much those apartments
It's like
cost a piece?
$335,000
It's insane.
a piece.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
There's no way I could put that into my building.
No, of course not.
So you have to like the quirkiness of the old buildings in Bellows Falls if you want to live here. And I
So
never
we have
have a
3
problem.
minutes. Should we be...
Well, we do have to pick another topic. We know we didn't cover all of this. We know that we're hoping that you will have comments that we can bring up at the next
and
episode.
we also hope that we kept it a little more less like bing, 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 bing,
yeah,
bing.
that we weren't all over the map this
trying
time.
to focus.
But maybe you liked it that way, so you want to tell us that too. They'll be making sure that you get our email address at the end of this program, and we want to make sure that you can get to us nonpchousing@gmail.com. And of course, we're going to make sure that again you'll see it. So whatever you need to do, and it'll be playing sometime soon to a social media near you.
I know.
And on YouTube
Right, we hope so.
and on Fact TV site.
And then our disclaimer hopefully will go up there too. But
I'm
just
sure it does. I'm pretty sure it
remind
is.
you that although we belong to different groups, we are here personally sharing our opinions.
These are our own opinions. Now we did add another factor. Hopefully it's stimulating. It's it's a wheel with a lot of different items on there for upcoming episodes. And Rebecca's going to spin.
Yeah, you have to
see what next
and
week's
you
gonna
have
be.
to speak so that camera will show it.
Yeah, I have to swing some stuff.
So make sure you
What is it?
Okay, so wait, it says. Oh, wait, you better turn it a little bit to me because it's purple. It's on purple. It says change needed.
All right.
Oh, that's a big topic.
That's a big topic. We'll have to do some.
What's the
yeah,
change
some-
needed in Bellows Falls? So
Yep.
if you want to email us or just make comments on Fact TV Facebook, what changes are needed?
to make things right. I mean,
Yeah.
and we're talking both sides of the fence here.
Yep.
So,
And
tenants who need better,
we really
landlords who
should
need
start
better.
locally, but it goes all the way up
Right.
to federal.
We know that that everything we're talking about is everywhere. This isn't the only place, but this is where we live, and so this is the place we want to affect change. So we have to start somewhere. So we start where we live, which makes perfect sense. We're coming up, and everyone is saying, yeah. Thank you everyone for watching us. Make sure to give us comments. We appreciate the feedback. We really, really do. Positive, negative, neutral, whatever it is. We want to improve this and make it a useful tool for everybody. So.
You know, and my take on this is we don't mean to pick out one building. I did contact the new owner. He's happy to give us information, and the pictures were willingly given to us from other local landlords that are as frustrated as what we may sound like too. So everything that was seen here was all copacetic, and everyone agreed to it. And please, we're really looking for shares on this topic and this show, and your comments. Thank you for watching.
And yeah, we're here to support both landlords, tenants, people like me, people like Deb, people like Rebecca, people like you. So it's all part of the process.
Yep. I want to thank you very
Cheers.
much for listening, and
Yeah.
cheers to everyone. Thank you, guys.